There is a root to everything. In order to treat the illness, you need to find the root cause. Hello, beautiful people. I hope you guys are well. This is episode 2 of Beyond What You See. In the first episode, we discussed the protocol breaker, what it means to be a protocol breaker, how to know that you are a protocol breaker. But today's episode, we are going to be looking at how to actually identify patterns and a few other stuff. So what we do need to understand is that when it comes to generational patterns, or when it comes to the spiritual realm, just as the physical realms, there are laws, okay, that govern how things operate spiritually. So in order for you to fight something, you need to understand what you're fighting and how to fight it. You need to understand that this battle is not a physical battle. It is a spiritual battle. No soldier goes into battle without being well prepared. When it comes to breaking protocol, there are certain elements and concepts that you need to follow. There are 3 elements that you have to have. You have to have wisdom, because wisdom is required for fighting these things. You're not just gonna go physically and talk anyhow. You're not gonna just be like, oh yeah, I'm the generational breaker, so I've got what it takes, I'm gonna do this. No, you don't talk too much, number 1. Number 2, you have to acquire understanding. Understand what you're fighting so you can fight it well. Another thing that you need to also note is that there needs to be knowledge of where it started from. What gap did we leave for such a thing to follow on to generations that has been going on for so many years? And that's what this video is going to cover. But the first thing is righteousness. Are you fully committed? Are you fully devoted to God, so much so that you can deliver this assignment? You cannot be a friend of the world and then think that you can fight. You cannot dwell in carnal things and think that you've got what it takes to fight spiritual battles. See, the Bible says in Ephesians chapter 6, verse 10 to 12, finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. Put on the whole armor of God, that you may be able to stand against the wills of the devil. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of darkness of this age, against spiritual hosts of the wickedness in the heavenly places. Understand that in order to fight this fight, you need to be righteous before the sight of God, so that he can really have a deep communion with you. You need to be one with God in order to fight this, because you can pray, but you have to be aligned to God, completely aligned, not just a little, but a lot. Because that's the reason why things can transcend through generations. Because yes, they prayed, God changed my story. But where was the element of obedience? Where was the element of surrender so that God can really change the story? There wasn't. It was change my story, but they go back onto living an unrighteous life, but they expect things to change. If you have been called to be a protocol breaker, you are the one that's been called to stand in a gap. You need to understand the importance of living in righteousness, being one with God and not allowing anything to separate you from God. Because one thing you need to understand is that it is only with God and through God can you break the protocols. Because understand, as I said in the previous episode, that protocols have been placed way before you were even invented. And it could even be that this protocol has been in place even before your parents and your grandparents were even made. So if you're fighting these ancient battles, you need to be one with God, because having a revelation is one thing, but knowing how to move after that revelation is another. And the only way you know how to move now that you've got this revelation is by becoming one with God. If you're not one with God, how do you expect for the blueprint to be laid out to you, for the battle plan to be laid out with you? Every single soldier prepares for the battle before he steps onto that battlefield. So if you think you can just stand up and go and fight, you're in for a treat, because there's levels to this. People like to talk about, oh, casting and binding. Everything is about casting and binding, but sometimes there's certain battles that require casting and binding. Okay, let's talk. Doors must have been opened. There must have been an infiltration one way or another. There must have been something that must have been done. It takes one person to change the story in a good and a bad way. So where did it all begin? The only way that you can know these things is by seeking God. God, where did it begin? Show me how it all began. Because it could have been somebody's sin occult practices. Covenants were made. There are so many ways that a pattern can be formed, a protocol can be formed. So many ways these rules can be set in place. But the only way for you to know is by seeking God. God, how? Where did it begin? How did it begin? You see, Satan is not powerful as God is. He is not all-knowing. He is not all-present. But he is sneaky and strategic. Which is why it says he comes as a thief. And in order for you to defeat such, you need to also move with strategy. See, one thing about Satan is that before he changes a story, he looks for access points. He looks for a leak. The very moment that he discovers the leak, then he infiltrates the leak, and before you know it, a family is embarking on a very long journey until a deliverer rises up. All it takes is access points to be available for an open door. Just one small, it doesn't even need to be a fully open door. All it takes is one small crack on the door, and Satan suddenly comes in and he's like, yep, let me take my dwelling place. We'll see if this family shall rise. Another thing you need to understand is that access points don't close when you become a Christian. When you become a Christian is the beginning of you experiencing aspects of liberation, but full liberation comes when you discover those access points and you burn the ground down. Now, in Matthew chapter 16 verse 19, now this is where we talk about the power that we have in this. It says, and I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. One thing that people need to understand is that we've been given power. We also have an element of authority, and it's very important that we exercise that authority and exercise it well, especially when it comes to this battle. Once you have gone through the spiritual inventory, having an understanding of certain things, the patterns and all that kind of stuff, the next step is for you to understand the power that you hold. You hold the power to bind. Cast and bind, the prayers that no one likes, the prayers that people like to make a mockery of. Every day, cast and bind. Casting and binding does really give liberation. A lot of people have found liberation in casting and binding. I burned down every demonic altar that was placed in my family before I was even created. Every altar that is oppressing the rising of men in my family. You need to be specific. This is where we're casting and binding. Because whatever you bind on earth shall be bound in heaven. So whatever you speak out in the physical will manifest itself spiritually. Yeah? Just as we say the spiritual governs the physical, you also have power to command things physically and it will unfold spiritually. So it's all about positioning yourself and also understanding the authority that you have. Because you've been given the authority, you've been given the keys, but the question is, how am I using it to fight this battle? Because you need to understand that victory is already yours. Your assignment isn't to win victory, because victory is already yours, especially when you're in Christ. Victory was won at Calvary. So victory is not our mission point. Our mission point is to break every single protocol that stands in the way of a man's progression in our family, in our bloodline. So let's actually go into some precise points. So how to map the bloodline. What are the recurring patterns? What is it in your family? Identifying what exactly it is. Sit down, identify what the recurring patterns is. What is the thing that you've identified before that you said, this is not normal? Start from there. Start noting it down. This is not normal. God, reveal to me where this could have started from. God reveals. Sometimes we need to place ourselves in a position of praying and seeking out that God will reveal certain things to us, because God does really reveal. He reveals to redeem. So now that you've identified a pattern, the next step is identifying the possible entry points. Where could this pattern have actually started from? This requires a lot of family history work, because some practices where because someone is into witchcraft, some practices is because of sexual sin, some practices are established because of occult activity. There's just so many elements to entry points, and you need to go ahead and source that out. If there's questions that need to be asked, ask them. But make sure that you have an understanding of what you're fighting. This is the reason why you do this. You don't just go into the battle just like that. You need to understand. So you need to do all your research. Gather as much research as you can to understand what the assignment is and how to deliver this assignment. Because you need to understand that there is a root to everything. In order to treat the illness, you need to find the root cause. No illness is cured without identifying the root cause of it. You need to identify the root cause. So yeah, this is the second episode of the 4-part series Beyond What You See. If there's anything that you'd like me to go deeper on, please do comment down below. There is a lot of depth to this conversation and there's more to come. The reason why I even started this little series is because for the longest, I've come to an understanding that in our generation, there are a lot of people that are fighting battles. Them guys may think it's down to their choices that they've made. Them guys think that it's their fault that they're struggling so much and they're experiencing so much resistance. But I think it's about time we became aware of the spiritual aspects of certain things. And this is not to, take away accountability where accountability can be given, but it's also to show that there may be a possibility that what you're fighting is not something that you've done, but something that was established before you were even created. So yes, thank you for watching. Please do like, comment, and subscribe. Take care of yourself. Bye.